Joined now by Mbali Thethani, our reporter. She was at the briefing at Latuli House earlier. Mbali, good afternoon to you. We'll get into the technicalities in a moment, but first, this is a real change to how the ANC's done things in the past. I mean, possibly the biggest departure, the biggest change to their elections, their internal leadership battles since probably democracy.
That's certainly right, Stephen. And you'd remember that it's the likes of the 54th conference. That's why we find ourselves here. And you'd know that even in the past, they struggled a lot, especially trying to deal with the factional battles within the party. And you'd remember that in 2017, we had the likes of the CR17 campaign. We also had the NDZ campaign. We had the likes of Lindiwe Sisulu. And of course, because of those campaigns and the factions that we've continued to see and still affects the ANC, of course, they are now trying to manage how their members will be campaigning. Of course, and as you said there in your headlines, that campaign season will definitely start on the 7th of September. But it's quite, interesting. They are saying that they will no longer be allowing their members to have their own slogans, to have their own faces, to have any sort of campaign that does not go in line with the ANC. It is going to be quite different this time around. I mean, I've covered some of the provinces' conferences, and of course, we've seen different T-shirts, different slogans, the Palestinian scarves in KZN, and of course, it seems as if they are now trying to do away with those factions, and they are saying that going into this conference, things will be quite different. But, Stephen, it is going to be quite difficult to do that, because you would know that you are also dealing with the likes of social media, where they're saying that they will not allow for any slates, of course, to participate in their conferences. And you would know already we've seen many banners making the rounds, especially on Twitter. Of course, when it comes to how will they contain this, it's going to be something that is quite difficult. Of course, Stephen, also talking about the issues around campaigning and vote buying. This is something that Kgalema Motlanthe also spoke about, in his, a press briefing a bit earlier on, in terms of how they will manage that. And you'd remember, because of those CR17 bank statements, which are now sealed, this is something that they'll also try to deal with. Let's take a listen to what he had to say a bit earlier on.
The Electoral Committee has a mandate from the 54th National Conference to rid the ANC of negative and corrupt practices in leadership selection, vote buying, and promotion of slates specifically. No delegate should vote for leaders they do not know and respect. A short CV will be published for every candidate on the final nomination list, so that each and every member can at least make a choice, from an informed position.
The idea of publishing CVs, this is, how do I put it, very un-ANC in Mbali. It's not how things have been done in the past.
You're certainly right, Stephen. I mean, we've never had something like this take place. And they already started with that process, especially during the local government elections. And you would remember that, some of their members needed to present their CVs and had to be interviewed. And, of course, now they are saying that this process that they're undertaking, of course, they want to select the best NEC members to form part of the ANC. And of course, you'd also remember that even on the rules of this conference, when it comes to those who are also facing charges, that also comes into play. They are now saying that even though if you want to stand for a position within the NEC, you're also not supposed to have any charges constituted against you. So it's also quite interesting there. So, like the likes of Ace Magashule will not be given an opportunity, of course, Stephen, to then run for any sort of position come the December conference. But of course, Stephen, let's also take a listen to what Kgalema Motlanthe had to say when it comes to campaigns in the ANC.
So essentially what we're saying is that the mandate that the delegate is given by the branch must always prevail, on the proviso that there's room for influencing others and being influenced. So the rules for campaign events will apply from the time that nominations open on the 7th of September. From the 7th of September, nominations for the electoral conference will open. Candidates will be held responsible for preventing actions by supporters and for their campaign teams abiding by these rules.
There's so much here in Mbali, because in the past, as I understood it, you would have a branch meeting, the branch would send a delegate to the national conference, that delegate would have a mandate, but they could be lobbied, so they could change their minds when they got there. And this was always the accusation of vote buying at the conference itself. They're saying that can't happen anymore.
Of course, Stephen, and you'd remember that the ANC's never really had a rule when it comes to vote buying. I mean, it's not even there in the constitution. And of course, this is something quite new. It's something that they've been trying to maintain and trying to deal with. So this time around, they are saying that there will be no vote buying. But how are they essentially going to regulate that? How will you know if somebody has been bought by a certain official, to vote in their favor? And they are saying that, well, they will now be relying on their members. Of course, they will be relying on them to actually report some of their own members who are indeed bought by some candidates in the ANC's conference. It's going to be quite interesting, Stephen, how they plan to regulate that. From where I'm here right now, it's quite impossible to regulate how someone will be bought and how you will regulate that.
Mbali Thethani, thanks very much indeed. As always in politics, they don't tell you if they're bought, do they? Right, well, you see that in